There is a silent dread that hums in the background of nearly every human heart, the unspoken fear of decline, of inevitable decay, of the body, slowly breaking down, like a house collapsing stone by stone under the weight of time. It begins quietly, with whispers in the mind. You are not as strong as you once were. Age is catching you. Illness runs in your family. The future holds only weakness. These suggestions, repeated by society, echoed in doctors' offices, reinforced by the stories of our parents and grandparents, enter the subconscious like seeds of poison, and the body obeys them. Wrinkles, fatigue, and pain become not only physical processes but mental programs, rehearsed and reproduced until the body itself is convinced it must grow frail. Many live under this shadow, believing they are powerless against the march of years, bound to decline, sentenced by heredity and circumstance. Yet Joseph Murphy dares to lift a light into this dark corridor. He asks us to challenge the hypnosis of inevitability, to consider that the body is not merely a prison of flesh, but a living temple built by the subconscious mind, and that the subconscious, directed by faith and vision, can rebuild what has been broken and restore what seems lost. He would remind us that decline is not a divine decree, but a human belief impressed upon the inner life until it hardens into experience. The body is obedient, it follows the mental image it is given. If you see yourself as frail, the subconscious produces frailty. If you see yourself as vital, the subconscious produces vitality. And so the question becomes, what image are you commanding your body to follow? The scriptures whisper of a higher law, a law of renewal, law of resurrection. The spirit of him that raised Jesus from the dead shall quicken your mortal bodies. Quicken means to enliven, to regenerate, to restore with new vitality. This is not a promise postponed until some distant afterlife. It is a present principle, a law of inner resurrection, active here and now. The same spirit that formed your body in the womb, cell by cell, organ by organ, is still within you, still building, still listening for the command you will give. To whisper, I am weak, I am dying, I am old, is to order the inner builder to dismantle. To whisper, I am strong, I am renewed, I am whole, is to call forth resurrection power, to instruct the body to regenerate. Imagine your body not as a house collapsing beyond repair, but as a temple whose stones can be reset, whose walls can be strengthened, whose light can be rekindled. The subconscious mind is the master builder, infinite intelligence the architect, and every word you speak with faith is a command issued to the workers within. Tonight, before sleep, when the conscious guard is lowered and the subconscious lies open, you can whisper into this temple and direct its work. Say, every cell of me is filled with divine life. My body is restored now. The subconscious will not argue, it will not delay, it will take the command and begin to obey. Thus, in this opening step of our journey, we confront the great fear of decline, not with denial, but with authority. You are not sentenced to collapse, you are invited to resurrection. The body may have shown signs of wear, but the spirit within you is timeless, and when you align thought with spirit, the temple of your being can rise again in health, in youth, in strength. Decline is not destiny, resurrection is. And resurrection is not only for the dead, it is for the living. The myth of biological finality has cast its shadow over modern thought, persuading countless men and women to bow before the seeming authority of heredity and cellular mechanics, as if genes were jailers and DNA the prison walls of destiny. From every corner of the scientific world comes the refrain, you are your biology. You cannot escape what your cells dictate. Your code is fixed, and your story already written. And so, the average person, hearing this message repeated by experts and absorbed by culture, resigns themselves to what they believe is unchangeable. They point to the diseases of their family tree and say, this is my fate. They look at the statistics of age and decline and murmur, this is my destiny. Yet Joseph Murphy breaks into this fatalistic narrative with the thunder of a higher law, declaring that you are not the passive subject of DNA, but the conscious co-author of your own biological story, and that thought itself is the true command center of life. He invites us to consider DNA not as an immutable sentence, but as a parchment waiting for new writing. Picture your genetic code as a scroll, filled with lines upon lines of instruction, yet not sealed but open, its margins spacious, its text responsive to the pen of belief. If the pen writes with fear, guilt, and despair, the lines of sickness and decline lengthen. But if the pen writes with faith, love, and harmony, new lines of health and vitality appear. In this way, DNA is not the tyrant it is made to be, but the obedient scribe of the subconscious, copying into form whatever pattern the mind impresses. Modern science already whispers this truth through the discoveries of epigenetics, where environment and mindset can activate or silence genes. Yet Murphy goes further. Environment is not merely outer circumstance, but inner atmosphere, and the subconscious, bathed in thought and emotion, is the true environment of your cells. What you believe, you breathe into your DNA. What you expect, you command into your very flesh. Philosophically, this is the great liberation. The determinist says you are bound to the mechanics of matter, but the metaphysician replies that matter itself is bound to the mechanics of mind. The determinist says heredity is law. Murphy replies that belief is law, and belief shapes heredity itself. The determinist says the script is locked. Murphy says the script is open, awaiting your words. Thus, when you whisper before sleep, "My cells are governed by divine order, my DNA vibrates with harmony, my body regenerates now," you are not speaking fantasy, but issuing a direct order to the subconscious, which copies the command into the manuscript of your biology. Consider the emotional shift this brings. Instead of approaching the body as a helpless passenger carried along by genetic currents, you approach it as captain of the ship, issuing commands to a crew that listens faithfully. The body is not a stubborn rebel. It is a loyal servant awaiting clear instruction. If you tell it, decay is inevitable, it obeys. If you tell it, renewal is mine, it obeys with equal fidelity. The choice of command is always yours. This truth instills not only hope but responsibility, for every idle word, every anxious declaration is heard and recorded by the subconscious. Murphy therefore urges us to become deliberate, to speak with authority, to write with intention upon the parchment of our being. So the myth of biological finality crumbles in the light of spiritual law. You are not chained to a past inscribed in molecules. You are free to inscribe a present and a future radiant with health, vitality, and renewal. Tonight, when the veil of sleep lowers and the subconscious is most receptive, do not rehearse the myth of decline. Whisper instead the declaration of freedom. I am more than biology. I am spirit commanding form. My DNA is the parchment, and my faith writes the script. The law of inner resurrection governs me now. And with these words spoken in quiet conviction, you awaken to the exhilarating truth that finality is illusion and regeneration is reality. Murphy's law of regeneration does not rest on vague optimism or poetic metaphor, but on the steadfast recognition that the subconscious mind is the ceaseless builder, the silent architect, the hidden physician of every tissue, nerve, and organ in your body. It is this vast intelligence that orchestrates the trillions of cellular transactions each moment, that maintains the delicate balance of blood chemistry, that heals a wound without your conscious awareness, that knits together a broken bone while you sleep. You do not rise each morning and consciously direct your liver to filter toxins or your heart to pump blood through miles of vessels. These functions proceed with immaculate precision because the subconscious mind, charged with the memory of divine order, sustains them. And if the subconscious is already capable of building the body, is it not equally capable of rebuilding it? If it can weave cells from a single fertilized seed into a complete organism, is it not able to restore cells grown weary with age, to replace diseased tissue with new, vibrant life? Murphy's resounding answer was yes. The subconscious mind can regenerate, for it is the very presence of God in action within the flesh. The theological underpinning of this law is found in the eternal declaration of Scripture. The Spirit of him that raised Jesus from the dead shall quicken your mortal bodies. To quicken is to enliven, to regenerate, to restore vitality where decay once reigned. The resurrection power is not a distant miracle locked in sacred history, but a living law present in every human being. Just as spring breaks the grip of winter and brings blossoms from bare branches, so the spirit within you can break the grip of decline and bring renewal to your very cells. Murphy interpreted this not as an isolated event, but as a universal principle. What was demonstrated in Christ is available to all, for the same Spirit dwells in all. Thus, the law of regeneration is not a special intervention, but the natural operation of divine order, waiting only for your cooperation. Imagine then the subconscious as a master surgeon, infinitely skilled, infinitely tireless, working in the silent theater of your body. When you speak words of fear, guilt, or despair, it takes those as surgical instructions and carves weakness into the tissues. But when you speak words of faith, gratitude, and harmony, it follows those commands with equal fidelity, reconstructing the organs, renewing the blood, restoring the nerves. It is impartial, it does not argue, it does not reason. It only obeys the most frequent and most emotionally charged impression it receives. This is why Murphy taught the discipline of whispered affirmations before sleep. In the twilight state, when resistance is lowered, the subconscious accepts suggestion most readily, and those suggestions become the orders it carries out through the night. The spoken word is the scalpel in the hands of the inner surgeon, and every syllable charged with faith directs the operation toward wholeness. Consider the metaphor of a cathedral under repair. Centuries of weather have worn the stones, cracks mar the arches, and dust dims the stained glass. Yet the master builder, equipped with the original design, begins the work of restoration. Piece by piece, stone by stone, he resets the structure, cleanses the glass, and restores the cathedral to its radiant beauty. So, too, the subconscious, holding within itself the perfect divine pattern, begins its restoration the moment you command it with faith. It does not need to invent the design anew. It remembers the original blueprint of health, youth, and harmony, and it works ceaselessly to reinstate it. And so Murphy declares, if you desire regeneration, do not plead, do not beg, do not despair. Speak with quiet authority to the subconscious, the hidden builder, and it will obey. Whisper before sleep, the spirit within me quickens my mortal body. Every cell is restored, every tissue is renewed. Divine life surges through me now. Say it not once, not timidly, but persistently, until the subconscious accepts it as law. For once accepted, the law of regeneration goes to work immediately, silently, irresistibly, restoring your body according to the perfect pattern. This is Murphy's law of regeneration, that what is impressed with faith upon the subconscious must inevitably be expressed in flesh, and that the spirit which raised Christ from the dead still works in you, commanding yourselves to rise, to regenerate, to live again. From the very moment we are born, society begins whispering into our ears a subtle but relentless hypnosis. You are getting older. Life is a slow decline. With age comes weakness. Expect pain. Expect disease. Expect the dimming of faculties and the shrinking of possibilities. These suggestions come wrapped in humor sometimes, as when people joke about their age, but beneath the laughter lies fear. They come wrapped in authority when physicians, often without ill intent, pronounce decline as inevitable. They come wrapped in family stories when we hear again and again, your father suffered from this, your mother lost her strength early, it runs in the family, and the subconscious, ever receptive and never discriminating, absorbs these impressions and accepts them as law. The result is a life that bends beneath the hypnosis of aging, a body that begins to conform to the image repeatedly impressed upon it by the world. Joseph Murphy warned that this cultural hypnosis is one of the greatest obstacles to renewal, for what is rehearsed daily in thought becomes flesh. If every birthday is marked not with gratitude for life, but with dread of decline, the subconscious hears the dread and begins to etch it into the body. Wrinkles deepen not merely because of years, but because of expectation. Joints stiffen not only through use, but through the subconscious order impressed by fear of immobility. The subconscious is the soil, and if you continually plant the seeds of decline, decline must be the harvest. Murphy would say, stop hypnotizing yourself into decay. Stop rehearsing the lie of inevitability. Beneath the false program lies the eternal script of God, untouched, uncorrupted, awaiting only your command to reassert itself. To illustrate, imagine a manuscript of great beauty, its words luminous, its meaning profound, but left unattended in a damp room. Over years, rust from the ink bleeds across the pages, mildew stains the margins, and readers conclude the text itself is ruined. Yet, if one dares to clean the parchment, the original brilliance emerges unspoiled. So it is with the human body. Beneath the stains of false belief lies the perfect code of wholeness. Aging is not an iron decree, but rust upon the manuscript, and the subconscious, once given the order, can cleanse the rust and restore the original writing. The invitation, then, is to reject the mass suggestion that decline is your destiny. When the world says, "Prepare for weakness," whisper instead, "I am strong with the strength of God." When society says, "Expect sickness," whisper, "The healing presence restores me now." When family stories insist, "This runs in your bloodline," whisper, "The life of God flows in my blood. Divine order rules me." These whispered words, especially before sleep, penetrate the subconscious and begin to undo the hypnosis of decline. They are like oil dissolving rust, restoring clarity to the hidden script of vitality. Murphy would press upon his listeners that resurrection is not only for the afterlife, but for the body here and now. To awaken from the hypnosis of aging is itself a resurrection, arising from the tomb of false belief into the garden of truth. The cells are not deaf. They listen to the tone of your inner voice. Speak death, and they obey with decline. Speak life, and they obey with renewal. The myth of inevitable decay is powerful only because it is repeated. The repetition of truth charged with faith is infinitely more powerful. So tonight, when the suggestions of the world still echo in your mind, take back authority. Whisper not the chant of society, but the decree of spirit. I am renewed like the eagle. Every day I grow stronger, younger in spirit, freer in body. My cells obey the law of inner resurrection. As you fall asleep with these words, the subconscious receives them as the new law and begins at once to restore what fear had corroded. The rust fades, the manuscript shines, and the body, once bent beneath hypnosis, rises to reflect again the eternal pattern of God. If the first hypnosis is the suggestion that age must bring decay, the second and often more insidious hypnosis is the identity that forms around illness itself, what Joseph Murphy would call the illness identity. It begins subtly. A diagnosis is given, a symptom becomes persistent, a condition lingers longer than expected. Instead of seeing the ailment as temporary, many begin to weave it into the fabric of their self-image. They say not merely, "I have arthritis," but "I am an arthritic." They do not only acknowledge, "I have diabetes," but affirm, "I am a diabetic." The subconscious, always literal and obedient, takes these words as commands. It fuses the disease with identity, engraving it into the blueprint of the body, making it far harder for regeneration to occur because the body is simply following the script it has been handed. Murphy insisted that no sickness should ever be accepted as identity, for to do so is to hand the subconscious a poisoned decree. He illustrated this point with vivid metaphors, reminding his readers that illness is not a master but a parasite feeding upon imagination. Picture a parasite that only survives when given attention, clinging to the thought life, drawing strength from constant rehearsal. The more the sufferer speaks of the condition, broods over it, claims it as mine, the more firmly the parasite attaches itself, until the host forgets they were ever whole. But the parasite is not invincible. The moment attention is withdrawn, the moment identity is reclaimed as health and wholeness, the parasite withers for lack of nourishment. And so Murphy urged his listeners, stop feeding the parasite of illness with your words, your fears, and your rehearsals. Withdraw attention, affirm the truth, and the parasite must die. Philosophically, this reveals the crucial distinction between condition and essence. A condition may exist in the body, but it is not the essence of the soul. To identify with a condition is to mistake shadow for substance, The essence is divine, eternal, whole. The condition is temporary, a reflection of thought images impressed upon the subconscious. By refusing to equate self with sickness, you reestablish the sovereignty of essence over condition. When you whisper, "I am whole, I am free, I am life itself," you are not denying the presence of symptoms. You are affirming the higher reality that commands the subconscious to dissolve the symptoms. You are reminding your cells that their master is not disease but spirit, not heredity but infinite intelligence. Murphy also emphasized the role of repetition in forming identity. Just as a child becomes fluent in language by hearing words repeated daily, so the subconscious becomes fluent in sickness when it hears the same words rehearsed. My bad back, my weak heart, my fragile nerves. These are affirmations, though negative ones, and they sculpt the body accordingly. The remedy is not silence, but substitution, replacing the destructive affirmations with constructive ones until a new identity forms. Whisper nightly, "My back is strong, my heart is steady, my nerves are calm." Every cell responds to divine order. With time, the subconscious accepts the new language, and the body begins to express it. The illness identity is replaced with the wholeness identity, and regeneration follows naturally. Theologically, this is nothing less than the call of Christ. "Lazarus, come forth!" Lazarus was bound not only by grave clothes, but by the identity of death itself, yet at the command of the word he rose, shed the wrappings, and walked into life. So too the body bound by the identity of sickness can rise when commanded by faith. When you whisper, "I am not this sickness, I am life everlasting, the spirit of resurrection dwells in me now," you are speaking the same command into your subconscious, and the cells, like Lazarus, respond. The grave clothes of false identity fall away, and the body begins to walk in newness of life. Therefore, the invitation is urgent. Release the illness identity. Stop calling sickness mine. Stop rehearsing the story of decline. Begin tonight, before sleep, to whisper with quiet certainty, "I am not this condition. I am spirit clothed in life. My body is obedient to divine law. Every cell regenerates. Every organ is renewed. Every function is restored." Let these words become your identity, and the subconscious will reshape the body to match. For the illness identity is a parasite, but the identity of wholeness is resurrection itself, and resurrection is the law of your being, waiting only for the command of your faith. When the veil of cultural hypnosis is torn away, and the false identity of illness is discarded, the soul stands at the threshold of revelation, that there exists within every human being a hidden reservoir of power, a spiritual spring that, once tapped, can flood the body with renewal. Joseph Murphy called this the revelation of resurrection power within, not a doctrine preserved for Sunday sermons or distant creeds, but a living law woven into the fabric of life itself. He would remind his readers that resurrection is not an event chained to the pages of history, nor a miracle reserved for saints, but a principle available to every person, every moment, every cell. The very spirit that raised Christ from the tomb dwells in you, and that spirit is not dormant. It is not waiting for some far-off moment. It is alive now, eager to quicken, to regenerate, to restore your mortal body with vitality. Consider the metaphor of seeds buried in the frozen ground of winter. To the eye they appear dead, lifeless, forgotten. Yet the instant spring arrives, the hidden power within them bursts forth, pushing through the soil, reaching for light, transforming barrenness into bloom. In the same way, the power of resurrection lies dormant in the subconscious, waiting for the warmth of faith to awaken it. The body may feel frozen in decline, the organs heavy with fatigue, the cells dulled by years of misuse, but at the whisper of truth, at the suggestion of divine order, the hidden seed stirs. It is not creation from nothing, it is awakening from slumber. Just as the oak is already present in the acorn, so wholeness is already present in the soul, waiting for the conditions of belief to call it forth. Murphy pointed again and again to the scriptural promise. The spirit of him that raised Jesus from the dead shall quicken your mortal bodies. To quicken is to vivify, to electrify, to infuse with the spark of life. He urged his listeners to meditate on this verse. not as poetry, but as law. If the spirit can raise the dead, surely it can restore the living. If it can breathe life into a body stilled in the grave, it can breathe vitality into a body weary but still standing. Resurrection power is not limited by degree. It is absolute, impartial, inexhaustible. The only limit is the belief that says, this is impossible. Remove the belief, whisper the command, and the law of resurrection rushes into action. Visualize, if you will, a golden current flowing through every cell of your being. Imagine it as radiant light, shimmering like liquid sunshine, coursing through your bloodstream, illuminating your organs, electrifying your nerves. This current is not fantasy but symbol, a way for the conscious mind to speak to the subconscious in the language it understands, imagery and feeling. As you whisper before sleep, the resurrection power flows through me now. See this golden current touching every dormant cell, awakening it, commanding it to live. Feel warmth spreading through your body, peace calming your mind, strength returning to your limbs. The subconscious, receiving both word and image, begins its silent work, orchestrating renewal in obedience to the law. Philosophically, this revelation collapses the supposed barrier between natural and supernatural. What we call natural processes of healing, the closing of wounds, the knitting of bone, the renewal of skin, are already expressions of resurrection power at work. The extraordinary is but the ordinary seen in its fullness. Every act of regeneration, no matter how small, is proof that the principle is alive within you. The only task is to expand its operation by impressing upon the subconscious larger images of wholeness, refusing to confine it to the limits of fear or expectation. So tonight, let the ritual be simple yet profound. As you lay down to sleep, whisper with calm conviction, "The Spirit of life quickens me now. Every cell awakens. Every organ is renewed. Resurrection is at work in me." Imagine the golden current flowing through your body. Feel gratitude as though the renewal were already complete, and surrender to rest. For in the silence of sleep, the subconscious will take this command and carry it out with divine precision. And when you awaken, know that you are not merely a creature of time bound to decline, but a temple of resurrection, housing within yourself the very spirit that restores, renews, and regenerates all things. To glimpse the reality of resurrection power within is to awaken to a startling vision of youth renewed, of vitality reborn, of an image of yourself, not bound by the calendar or the wear of years, but radiant with the eternal freshness of spirit. Joseph Murphy would often point to the psalmist's words, "Thy youth is renewed like the eagles." He saw in this not mere metaphor, but law, a promise that the subconscious, when impressed with the image of vitality, has the power to restore it. He reminded his listeners that age is largely an inner conviction, a script rehearsed and reinforced until the body mirrors it. How often have you seen one man at 60 lean, strong, and vibrant, while another at 40 walks bent and weary? The difference lies not only in diet or habit, but in belief, for the subconscious obeys the dominant image. If the image is one of decline, decline follows. If the image is one of youth and strength, the body finds ways to express it. Murphy urged his students to replace the image of frailty with the image of eternal youth, not youth as vanity, nor youth as the shallow desire to deny the passing of years, but youth as the essence of renewal, the freshness of spirit made visible in flesh. He taught them to visualize themselves walking tall, breathing deeply, radiating energy, their faces glowing with peace. He asked them to whisper before sleep, "I am renewed day by day. The life of God restores my youth. Every cell of me sings with vitality." These words, coupled with the image of strength, are impressed upon the subconscious, and the subconscious, like a faithful builder, begins its work of restoration. Consider the metaphor of a spring hidden beneath layers of dust. For years it lies forgotten, covered by debris, assumed to have dried up. Yet when the dust is swept away, the water gushes forth as pure and fresh as the day it first appeared. So too the spring of youth within you has never dried up. It is only obscured by false beliefs, by the hypnosis of decline, by the dust of fear and resignation. When you sweep these away with affirmations of life and images of renewal, the spring bursts forth again, washing through your body with vitality. The freshness you thought lost was never lost at all. It was waiting, hidden beneath the rubble of suggestion, ready to flow the moment you cleared the way. Philosophically, this reveals the profound distinction between chronology and consciousness. Chronology measures years on a clock, but consciousness measures vitality and spirit. You may have lived 40 or 80 years by the calendar, but the true measure of youth lies in the images impressed upon the subconscious. A mind convinced of decline will age a body prematurely. A mind saturated with resurrection images will keep the body supple, vibrant, and strong. Murphy insisted that the subconscious does not keep calendars, it does not know time, it only knows suggestion, and it expresses whatever it is given. If you continually suggest decline, it expresses decline. If you continually suggest renewal, it expresses youth. This is why Murphy pointed to the simple but powerful practice of daily affirmation. To say with conviction, "I am young in spirit, strong in body, radiant in life," is to plant seeds of vitality in the soil of the subconscious. To picture yourself rising each morning refreshed, to feel gratitude as though it were already so, is to water those seeds with faith. Over time, the harvest must appear, for the law is unfailing. What is impressed is expressed, and when it appears, others may marvel, saying, "How is it that you look so alive, so strong, so young?" But you will know the answer. You commanded your subconscious with truth, and it obeyed. So tonight, as you prepare to sleep, do not rehearse the stories of decline. Do not whisper, "I am getting old. I am worn out. I am losing strength." Instead, affirm with gentle certainty, "The Spirit renews me now. My youth is restored. My strength is quickened. Every cell in me vibrates with the joy of life." See yourself moving with ease, smiling with radiance, living with freedom. Let this image be the last impression upon your mind as you drift into slumber. For the subconscious, faithful to its nature, will take this image as blueprint and begin at once to inscribe it upon your body. And in time, you will rise with the strength of the eagle, renewed not by chance but by law, not by fantasy but by faith. And you will know that the image of eternal youth is more than a dream. It is the divine pattern, reasserting itself in you, having unveiled the truth that youth and vitality are not lost treasures but living patterns ready to be reawakened. Joseph Murphy turns to the practical art of reinstating the divine blueprint by learning how to speak directly to the cells of the body. He taught that every cell is alive with intelligence, every atom is obedient, every nerve and tissue is attuned to the commands of the subconscious mind. The body is not a random collection of biological fragments. It is a kingdom, an orderly empire governed by law, where the subconscious reigns as sovereign and the conscious mind acts as herald, issuing decrees. Too often the herald proclaims words of fear, words of weakness, words of resignation, and the kingdom obeys with decay. But Murphy urges us to reclaim our authority, to speak as children of God endowed with creative power, and to issue commands of renewal, healing, and harmony. To speak to your cells is not superstition but spiritual law, for the subconscious receives every word clothed in feeling and transmits it to the body as command. Consider the metaphor of a great orchestra tuning its instruments before a performance. If the conductor waves his baton aimlessly, the violins screech, the horns falter, the percussion pounds without rhythm. Yet when the conductor lifts his hand with clarity, authority, and confidence, the chaos subsides into harmony, every instrument aligning with his intention. So too are your cells like instruments awaiting the baton of your thought. If you command discord by repeating, "I am weak, I am sick, I am tired," they play a discordant tune and the body sinks into disharmony. But if you whisper with faith, every cell responds to divine order, every cell vibrates with life, every cell sings the song of health, then the orchestra of your body begins to play in perfect rhythm once more. and the music of vitality fills your being. Murphy was relentless in reminding his listeners that the subconscious never debates. It does not stop to ask whether your words are logical or whether they conform to the so-called evidence of the senses. It accepts the repeated, emotionally charged command as true, and it works day and night to bring it into manifestation. This is why he insisted on the discipline of whispered affirmations at the gateway of sleep. In that drowsy interval, the conscious critic is subdued, and the subconscious, open and receptive, accepts suggestion most readily. If you whisper in those moments, "My body is filled with light, my cells obey divine law, my tissues are renewed by spirit," then through the night, while you rest, the subconscious inscribes these words into the very code of your being. It is as though you had handed the inner builder blueprints of perfection, and he sets about the work immediately, without delay. Theologically, this practice rests on the ancient truth that life and death are in the power of the tongue. Words are not idle sounds. They are carriers of power, vessels of spirit, commands to the unseen forces that shape your life. When you whisper health, you release health. When you whisper weakness, you release weakness. The cells of your body hear your inner voice more clearly than any physician's diagnosis, and they obey it with absolute fidelity. To speak to them is to address the Spirit of God dwelling in them, for it is that Spirit which animates their life. Thus, when you whisper, "Every cell of me is obedient to the Spirit of God. Every strand of DNA reflects divine harmony," you are invoking not fantasy but the eternal law of cause and effect, and the subconscious faithful servant of spirit carries it out. So tonight, take up the role of conductor, king, commander, and shepherd of your inner kingdom. Whisper with tenderness but with authority. Every cell hears me now. Every cell vibrates with divine life. Every cell is restored and renewed. Do not strain, do not plead, but speak with serene confidence, as one who knows that the law must obey. See in your imagination the cells glowing, aligning, harmonizing, like musicians tuning to a perfect chord. Feel gratitude rising in your heart, the assurance that the command has been received and is already being fulfilled. Then surrender to sleep, knowing that through the silent hours, your subconscious, the divine surgeon, the master builder, is carrying out your words, regenerating your body in exact obedience to the decree you impressed upon it. For to speak to your cells is to speak to the temple of God, and the temple always responds when addressed with faith. To speak to your cells with conviction is to exercise the law of the word itself, the immutable principle that the subconscious executes the spoken decree without hesitation or delay, for it cannot distinguish between truth and falsehood, only between command and silence. Joseph Murphy again and again reminded his listeners that words, clothed in belief, are not mere vibrations of air, but spiritual forces that shape substance. Scripture affirms, life and death are in the power of the tongue. And Murphy unveiled this not as a poetic flourish, but as a precise statement of psychological and spiritual law. Every word you speak inwardly or outwardly is heard by the subconscious, and the subconscious, impartial and tireless, translates it into form. When a man mutters daily, "I am sick, I am frail, I am cursed by heredity," he is issuing a decree that the inner builder must obey, and the cells conform. But when that same man whispers in faith, "I am strong, I am healed, I am filled with divine vitality," then the subconscious hears a new law, and the cells, as faithful servants, shift their function to align with it. Imagine for a moment the subconscious as a vast court of scribes, each ready to copy into the book of your body whatever words are delivered from the throne of consciousness. If the throne speaks confusion, the scribes inscribe confusion. If the throne proclaims harmony, the scribes write harmony into every tissue. The law of the word is absolute. The scribes never question the order, they only copy and execute. This is why idle chatter and careless self-condemnations are so dangerous, for the subconscious does not treat them as jokes, but as commands. How many times do people say, "This kills me, this makes me sick, I'm falling apart," not realizing that each phrase is being faithfully written into their inner book of life? Murphy's counsel was to guard the lips and guard the thoughts, to become deliberate in speech, for every word is a seed, and the harvest is inevitable. The practice he urged was simple yet profound, to make the spoken word an instrument of deliberate creation, especially in the twilight state before sleep. In those sacred minutes, when the conscious guard is lowered, the word enters unopposed into the soil of the subconscious. Whisper softly, but with authority. My words are creative. Every cell of me responds to divine command. I speak life, and life appears. I speak renewal, and my body obeys. Do not rush, do not babble. Let the words fall gently like drops of oil upon still water, spreading their influence through the subconscious with quiet power. Feel the resonance of each phrase. Imagine the cells responding like soldiers standing at attention and then surrender to sleep in peace. Theologically, the law of the Word is inseparable from the mystery of creation itself. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same Word that called galaxies into being, that set stars in their orbits and seas within their boundaries, is the principle that dwells in you, shaping your body and your destiny. To speak with faith is to echo the creative act of God, to align your personal word with the divine word, and to watch as creation unfolds in your very flesh. This is why Murphy insisted that prayer is not begging but commanding, not pleading but declaring. To beg is to affirm lack, to declare is to affirm law, and the law always responds to declaration. So take heed, do not let your lips be careless instruments of decay, but sanctify them as channels of life. Tonight, as you lie in the silence before sleep, let your final whisper be deliberate and alive. The word I speak is the word of God within me. Every cell hears me and obeys. My DNA inscribes health. My body reflects harmony. My spirit commands renewal. Feel the authority of these words as though already fulfilled. See the cells glowing with obedience. And trust that the scribes of the subconscious are already copying them into the manuscript of your being. For the law of the word is unbreakable. What you declare with faith, you will see. And so, speak life, and life will answer. Speak resurrection, and resurrection will rise within you. Having established that the spoken word is law to the subconscious, Joseph Murphy now guides us into the deeper mystery of fusing imagery with affirmation, the practice he often described as the healing whisper. Words alone, when muttered without feeling or vision, may skim the surface of the subconscious like stones skipping across a pond, leaving only faint ripples. But when words are clothed in imagery and saturated with emotion, they sink deep into the fertile soil of the inner mind and take root as living seeds. Murphy taught that the subconscious is impressionable through pictures more than through logic, through symbols more than through syllogisms, through imagination more than through argument. To whisper, I am whole, while picturing yourself frail and defeated, is to send conflicting signals to the inner builder. But to whisper the same phrase while vividly imagining your body radiant with health, your cells glowing with light, your nerves singing with harmony, is to hand the subconscious a blueprint so clear that it cannot resist. The subconscious, impartial and obedient, takes the blueprint and builds accordingly. Visualize the moment before sleep, that golden threshold where the conscious mind grows drowsy and the subconscious stands watchful, ready to accept without debate. You lie quietly, your breath slowing, your muscles releasing, and you begin to whisper softly, every cell in me is alive with divine life. I am whole, I am renewed, I am free. As you speak, you see in your inner vision a current of golden light flowing downward from the infinite, entering through the crown of your head and filling every organ, every tissue, every atom of your being. You imagine this light as liquid resurrection, dissolving pain, repairing damage, awakening dormant cells. You feel warmth spreading through your body, a tingling of energy, a deep peace. The whispered words and the glowing image merge, and together they impress the subconscious with irresistible authority. And as you drift into sleep, the subconscious continues the work, knitting the pattern of your vision into the very fabric of your body. Murphy likened this to painting a picture for the inner builder. A builder does not construct a house without a plan. He requires a clear design drawn in detail, showing the dimensions, the angles, the features. Words alone are like vague instructions. Build something good. But words united with imagery are like a detailed plan. Build this house with this roof, these windows, this garden. The subconscious, seeing the plan, sets to work immediately, summoning all inner resources to execute it. This is why visualization is indispensable. It provides the subconscious with a precise image to reproduce. When you combine it with a whispered affirmation, you not only give the plan but seal it with authority, ensuring that the blueprint is carried out. Theologically, this is a reenactment of the divine act of creation. God did not merely say, "Let there be light," as empty syllables. He envisioned light. He willed light. He felt the reality of light, and the universe obeyed. In the same way, your whispered word, when infused with vision and feeling, becomes creative. You echo the divine fiat within your own sphere, and the cells of your body, like galaxies to his voice, align themselves to your command. Murphy would say, "The word is the seed, the image is the soil, the feeling is the sunlight. Together they produce the harvest." So the practice of the healing whisper is both simple and profound. Relax your body, quiet your mind, whisper words of life, and at the same time imagine your body as already whole. See yourself walking with ease, smiling with radiance, living with freedom. Feel the gratitude as if it were already accomplished. Then release the image to the subconscious as you surrender to sleep, knowing that the inner builder has received the command and is already at work. Night after night, as you persist in this ritual, the subconscious will etch the new pattern deeper and deeper into your cells until the outer body conforms to the inner blueprint. This is the healing whisper, not a desperate plea, but a quiet decree, a merging of word, image, and feeling into the law of resurrection, commanding your cells to regenerate. Yet Joseph Murphy did not stop at the healing whisper alone, for he understood that the subconscious, like a child lulled to sleep by a bedtime story, responds not only to isolated words but to entire narratives, to vivid scenes that it cannot distinguish from reality. Thus, he taught the art of creating a mental movie of renewal, a practice in which the seeker, before surrendering to sleep, constructs in the theater of the imagination a scene of health, strength, and vitality, so convincing, so emotionally charged, that the subconscious accepts it as fact and sets about orchestrating its expression. Words are seeds, but pictures are landscapes, and when words and pictures merge, they form a script that the subconscious must enact. Imagine this. You are lying upon your bed, the weight of the day dissolving, the conscious guard lowering its defenses. Instead of replaying the scenes of worry, pain, or failure that so often haunt the mind at night, you deliberately construct a new story. You see yourself rising in the morning, your body light and strong, your face radiant with peace, your movements free and fluid. You picture yourself walking through the day with energy, climbing stairs with ease, laughing with loved ones, accomplishing your work joyfully. You allow yourself to hear the voices of others saying, "You look wonderful, you seem renewed. What has changed in you?" And in that imagined scene, you feel gratitude swelling as though it were already accomplished. The body does not know it is fantasy. The subconscious accepts it as blueprint, and the cells begin their quiet labor to reproduce it. Murphy pointed out that just as the subconscious cannot distinguish between a real wound and an imagined one, as demonstrated in hypnosis experiments, where a subject develops blisters when told they have been burned, so it also cannot distinguish between an imagined healing and a real one. If the picture is vivid enough, if the emotion is strong enough, the subconscious accepts it as reality and manifests it. He therefore urged his students to stop rehearsing sickness in their minds and instead rehearse health. Stop replaying scenes of limitation and instead replay scenes of freedom. He knew that what you dream repeatedly in imagination becomes what you live inevitably in the flesh. Philosophically, this practice reveals the unity of imagination and faith. Faith is not blind wishing but the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. To imagine vividly, to feel deeply, is to hold the evidence of the unseen in the heart. The subconscious, receiving this evidence, builds the unseen into the seen. The mental movie, therefore, is not childish fantasy, but adult creation, the deliberate use of imagination to command the law of life. Theologically, the mental movie aligns with Christ's teaching. When you pray, believe that you receive, and you shall have. To believe you receive is to imagine and feel it as already true. The prayer is not a plea for some distant favor, but a rehearsal of the fulfilled condition. When you whisper, "I am healed," and simultaneously see yourself walking with vigor, feel the joy of freedom, hear the laughter of celebration, you are praying as Christ taught, and the subconscious, which is the Father within, answers without fail. So let this practice become your nightly ritual. As you drift toward sleep, write and direct a movie of renewal. Cast yourself not as the victim, but as the victor, not as the patient, but as the healed. Let the scene be simple but vivid, and play it again and again until you feel it as real. Whisper affirmations as dialogue in the scene. See the light of health as the setting. Feel gratitude as the soundtrack. Then surrender to sleep, confident that the subconscious has accepted the script and begun the performance. For in the theater of the inner mind, every movie rehearsed becomes the reality expressed, and the law of resurrection ensures that the cells of your body, obedient actors, will play their roles faithfully until the scene of wholeness appears upon the stage of your life. The more deeply one reflects on the mystery of the subconscious, the more apparent it becomes that it is nothing less than the inner physician, the silent healer, the divine intelligence laboring ceaselessly within the sanctuary of the body. Joseph Murphy taught that every process of repair, every act of growth, every function that sustains life is directed by this hidden physician, which never slumbers, never tires, never ceases its ministry of care. You cut your finger, and without a single command from the conscious mind, cells multiply, tissues knit, skin closes, and health is restored. You eat, and digestion proceeds in perfect order. Nutrients are distributed, waste is removed, and balance is maintained without the slightest conscious effort. The same intelligence that once formed the heart and lungs in the secret silence of the womb now beats that heart and fills those lungs, not by your conscious will, but by the subconscious law of life. This physician knows how to mend, how to replace, how to regenerate, but it always obeys the impression it receives. If the conscious mind supplies fear, resentment, or despair, the subconscious receives those as commands and sabotages its healing work. But when the conscious mind supplies faith, gratitude, and life-affirming images, the subconscious multiplies them into health. Murphy would often liken the subconscious to a divine gardener tending an eternal garden within. If the seeds of sickness are planted by constant focus on disease, the gardener waters them faithfully and produces weeds of disorder. But if seeds of health, harmony, and vitality are sown through affirmations, prayers, and visualizations, the gardener waters those too, and a harvest of wholeness springs forth. The gardener does not discriminate. It only tends what is planted. And so the responsibility rests with you. Will you hand the subconscious weeds or roses, images of death or images of resurrection? The soil is fertile, the gardener tireless, and the harvest inevitable. Your task is simply to sow wisely. Picture this inner physician at work. Imagine a vast workshop where luminous artisans labor tirelessly, each one representing a function of the body. One mends tissues, another purifies blood, another restores nerve pathways, another strengthens bones. They work without complaint, without pause, responding only to the orders transmitted from above. If the conscious mind cries, "I am broken, I am frail, I cannot recover," the artisans lay down their tools and allow disorder to spread. But if the conscious mind whispers, "I am whole, I am strong, the life of God flows through me," they leap into motion, redoubling their efforts, restoring balance, repairing damage, renewing vitality. They do not debate the command, they simply follow it with mathematical precision. Theologically, this points again to the truth that God is not an external surgeon who must be persuaded to operate, but the indwelling intelligence already at work in the hidden depths of your being. Christ's words, "The Father within me, he doeth the works," are the very essence of Murphy's teaching. The subconscious is the channel of this Father, the instrument of his law, the executor of his will. When you speak affirmations of health, you are not inventing a fantasy, but aligning your conscious word with the divine physician's eternal work. You are reminding the inner healer of the perfect blueprint, and it responds instantly, directing your cells to regenerate in harmony with divine order. So, let the nightly ritual take on this deeper recognition. As you prepare for rest, do not merely repeat words mechanically. Whisper with reverence. The divine physician within me restores every cell. The inner gardener waters the seeds of life. The Spirit of God quickens my body now. See in your mind's eye the artisans of the subconscious at their workbenches, crafting health with luminous hands, weaving tissues with golden threads, pouring vitality into your blood. Feel gratitude swelling within you, as though the healing were already complete. Then release it all to the subconscious with the trust of a patient, placing themselves in the hands of the most skilled surgeon, confident that the work is being done perfectly. For the subconscious is your physician, your gardener, your master builder, and when it receives the impression of faith, it regenerates your body with the precision of law and the compassion of God. The testimony of science itself, when rightly interpreted, reveals a startling confirmation of Murphy's law of regeneration, but what the medical world calls the placebo effect is nothing less than proof that belief commands the body and faith edits the very script of DNA. Consider the countless documented cases where patients, convinced that they had received powerful medicine, experienced dramatic healing, though in truth they had been given only sugar pills or harmless injections. Tumors shrank, pain dissolved, wounds closed, not because of any chemical in the treatment, but because the subconscious, persuaded of healing, issued orders to the body to comply. The mere conviction that health was being restored became the catalyst for actual regeneration. To Murphy, this was not anomaly, but demonstration, a glimpse of the universal law, that the subconscious mind always expresses what it is impressed with, and that faith is the true medicine of the soul. He would remind us that Christ himself spoke this law plainly. "According to your faith be it unto you," and again, "Thy faith hath made thee whole." Nowhere did he say, "according to the pill," or "according to the physician's decree," but always, "according to your faith." The healing was not bestowed from without, but released from within. The placebo effect is simply the modern world's reluctant acknowledgement of what the prophets and mystics have always known. Belief is the architect of flesh. If a harmless pill, invested with belief, can catalyze healing, how much more powerful is a deliberate affirmation whispered into the subconscious with conviction, accompanied by imagery of health and gratitude for its fulfillment? Murphy delighted in pointing out that the placebo effect exposes the impotence of fear-based determinism. If the body were truly a machine governed solely by fixed laws of biology, then sugar pills could not produce real healing. Yet they do, because the true governing force is not chemistry but consciousness. The subconscious, when given a suggestion wrapped in expectation, mobilizes every system of the body to fulfill it. Hormones adjust, immune cells rally, neural pathways reconfigure, all in obedience to belief. Placebo is not accident but evidence, the fingerprint of resurrection law upon the human frame. Picture the implications. If false belief in the power of a harmless tablet can summon the body's forces into healing, how much greater is the potential of true belief in the divine law of life, consciously impressed upon the subconscious night after night? Placebo proves that the subconscious obeys suggestion. Murphy calls us to go further, to become the conscious physician of our own destiny, prescribing not sugar pills but living words, administering not inert substances but faith-charged affirmations. When you whisper, "Every cell of my body is quickened by the Spirit of God. Divine life surges through me now," you are providing the subconscious with the most potent medicine of all conviction, clothed in imagery and feeling. Theologically, this transforms the placebo effect from a curiosity into a sacrament of faith. It reveals that God has already placed within you the machinery of renewal, waiting only for your agreement to activate it. The Father within does the works the moment you believe. This is why Murphy would say, your faith speaks louder than your genes, louder than your fears, louder than any prognosis. Genes may carry potentials, but faith decides which ones are expressed. Fear may echo through the bloodline, but belief can silence its voice. So let the lesson be this: never again dismiss the quiet authority of your belief. Do not wait for outer medicine to convince you of inner healing. Instead, each night, whisper your own prescription. Write your own order upon the tablet of the subconscious. Say with conviction, I believe in the law of life within me. My body is restored, my cells obey, my future is radiant with health. Feel it, see it, know it, and rest in peace, for the law is universal. What is impressed in faith must be expressed in form. The placebo effect is but the shadow. The truth is the substance belief regenerates, faith resurrects, and your cells will obey the command of your conviction. Yet Murphy also warned with great urgency that as powerful as faith is in commanding the body into renewal, so too fear possesses a dark potency to issue commands of destruction. For fear is faith inverted, a belief in disaster clothed with emotion, and the subconscious obeys it with equal fidelity. He taught that every repeated fear is a silent order given to the cells, every anxious thought a decree of decay impressed upon the inner builder. A man who constantly mutters, I am afraid of sickness, I am afraid of failure, I am afraid of what runs in my family, is like a commander ordering his own troops to lay down their arms, abandon their posts, and let the enemy march unhindered into the city. The subconscious, impartial and uncritical, hears the command and obliges. It produces in the body the very symptoms feared, weakens the immune system, drains vitality, and even arranges external circumstances to mirror the inner terror. This is why so often what people dread most seems to arrive at their doorstep. Their fear has rehearsed the image so vividly that the subconscious, compelled to express, has brought it forth. Murphy countered this destructive cycle by insisting on the deliberate substitution of fear with faith. Fear says, I expect death. Faith says, I command life. Fear whispers, decline is inevitable. Faith proclaims, renewal is eternal. Fear rehearses failure. Faith rehearses triumph. And because the subconscious always obeys the strongest and most frequently impressed suggestion, whichever voice is repeated with emotion will inevitably prevail. This is why he urged his students to meet fear head-on with affirmations of life, not passively but decisively, to uproot the poison and plant the antidote. When a fearful thought arises, what if I grow weaker? What if disease takes hold? The immediate response must be, I dissolve fear now. The life of God flows through me. My body is filled with strength and courage. Repeated often enough, the new declaration overwrites the old program, and the subconscious begins to express health instead of decline. Consider the metaphor of a field. If weeds of fear are allowed to spread unchecked, they choke the life from the soil until nothing wholesome can grow. But if the farmer uproots the weeds and plants wheat in their place, the soil, impartial as always, nurtures the wheat as faithfully as it once nurtured the weeds. The soil does not argue, does not discriminate, does not ask whether it is feeding weeds or wheat. It simply nourishes what it is given. So too the subconscious does not question whether fear or faith is noble or ignoble. It simply expresses the seed sown. The work of the wise is therefore to stop sowing weeds and to deliberately sow the golden seed of truth. Theologically, this is the essence of resurrection faith. The angel at the tomb declared, Fear not, for fear is the great thief of life, while faith is the law of rising. Every command of fear is a little burial. Every command of faith is a little resurrection. To whisper in the silence of night, I am filled with divine courage. The spirit of life dissolves all fear in me now, is to roll away the stone from the tomb of your cells and allow resurrection to proceed unhindered. So let this practice become habitual. When fear arises, replace it instantly with faith. When dread whispers decline, counter it with the decree of life. Each night before sleep, whisper with conviction, I dissolve all fear, I embrace life. Every cell in me is filled with courage, vitality, and divine order. See the golden light of spirit sweeping through your body, washing away every shadow of fear, replacing it with radiant assurance. Fall asleep in that vision, and the subconscious, faithful and obedient, will inscribe the command of life into your DNA, regenerating your cells in perfect harmony. For fear commands death, but faith commands resurrection, and the law is sure. Whatever command is given with belief, the body must obey. Among all the subtle poisons that corrode the subconscious and distort the divine blueprint, Joseph Murphy placed special emphasis on resentment, that silent acid, which eats away at vitality and inscribes disease into the body's code. Resentment is more than a passing emotion. It is a fixation of memory, a mental rehearsal of injury that the subconscious interprets as a perpetual command. When a man clings to the thought, I was wronged, I was betrayed, I cannot forgive, he is impressing the subconscious with bitterness, and the subconscious, faithful as always, expresses it in the flesh. Tension grips the nerves, acids flood the stomach, joints stiffen, circulation falters. The outer ailment may be labeled arthritis, ulcer, or hypertension, but the root is the inner script of unforgiveness. Resentment is like keeping poison in one's bloodstream, hoping it will harm another. In truth, it is the one who harbors resentment who suffers. For the subconscious, impartial and literal, receives the bitter rehearsal as law and molds the body to reflect it. Murphy insisted that forgiveness is not optional sentiment but essential medicine, the only antidote to the corrosive effects of resentment. Forgiveness is not condoning injustice or pretending the wrong never occurred. It is the deliberate act of releasing the emotional charge so that the subconscious may be cleansed of the poison. He would say, you are tied to the person you resent with chains stronger than iron. Forgive, and you cut the cord. Release them, and you release yourself. The moment you sincerely whisper, I forgive, you are not setting the offender free, but setting yourself free, unlocking the inner prison where your vitality has been trapped. Forgiveness restores circulation not only of blood, but of life, of health, of divine supply. Consider the testimony he often shared of those healed instantly upon forgiving. A woman crippled by years of arthritis found her joints loosening and her pain dissolving within weeks of nightly affirmations. I release him completely. I forgive him and set him free. I am free, and God's love fills me. Her healing was not a miracle in the sense of divine exception, but the simple restoration of divine law. Resentment had poisoned her body, and forgiveness washed it clean. Another man, haunted by ulcers from years of bitterness toward a business partner, began repeating before sleep, I forgive, I release, love fills my heart. In time, the ulcers dissolved, not because of medicine alone, but because the subconscious, freed from bitterness, was able to restore harmony. These are not anomalies, but demonstrations of the principle. What is impressed must be expressed. If resentment is impressed, disease is expressed. If forgiveness is impressed, renewal is expressed. Theologically, this principle shines with the light of Christ's own words. Forgive, and you shall be forgiven. This is not a moral plea alone, but a spiritual law. To forgive is to remove the obstruction from the channel through which divine life flows. Jesus, even on the cross, declared, Father, forgive them, demonstrating that forgiveness is the act of resurrection itself, the refusal to let bitterness bind the soul in death. When forgiveness is whispered into the subconscious, the tomb of resentment cracks open, and the body, like Lazarus, comes forth into newness of life. So tonight, if there lingers in your heart any memory that festers, any wound still replayed, take it into your nightly ritual. Whisper not words of accusation, but words of release. I forgive freely and fully. I release all into the love of God. I am free, and love governs me now. Picture the face of the one you resent surrounded by light. See the chain between you dissolve. Feel the peace that follows as circulation is restored to your body and joy to your heart. Drift into sleep with this release, and know that the subconscious has received its new command. And in the days that follow, observe how the body loosens, how the heart lightens, how strength returns. For resentment is decay, but forgiveness is regeneration. And in the act of forgiving, you command your cells to renew, your tissues to revive, your life to rise again in the power of inner resurrection. When the poisons of fear and resentment have been dissolved and the subconscious has been cleansed of the shadows that distorted its expression, the soul awakens to a revelation as luminous as the dawn itself. That the new self is not something laboriously built from fragments of brokenness, but something eternally present, waiting to be revealed. Joseph Murphy proclaimed that regeneration is not the invention of a new being, but the unveiling of what has always been hidden beneath the veils of false belief. The divine blueprint of perfection, written by infinite intelligence, is indestructible. It cannot be erased by heredity. It cannot be destroyed by time. It cannot be annihilated by disease. It may be obscured. It may be forgotten. It may be overlaid with years of fear and doubt, but it remains intact, like the sun behind clouds, radiant and unchanging. Thus, to command your cells to regenerate is not to impose an alien idea upon them, but to remind them of what they have always known, that their true pattern is harmony, their true essence is vitality, their true origin is God. Philosophically, this realization dissolves the tension between determinism and freedom. You are not bound by an iron destiny scripted by DNA, nor are you condemned to invent your future from nothing. Rather, you stand at the intersection of eternal design and conscious choice. The eternal design is the blueprint of perfection, already written, eternally available. Conscious choice determines whether you align with that design or continue rehearsing the corrupted copies of fear. To say, "I am whole," is not to manufacture wholeness, but to choose alignment with the original script. To say, "I am renewed," is not to deny time, but to invoke timelessness. To say, "I am strong," is not to boast, but to affirm what infinite spirit is already implanted in your being. Freedom lies not in rejecting the divine plan, but in reasserting it, claiming it, embracing it as your present reality. Murphy often illustrated this truth with the metaphor of a software system corrupted by viruses. A computer may be slowed, its functions distorted, its files corrupted, but the original operating system remains stored and can be reinstalled to restore order. Likewise, the subconscious may have been programmed with false images, negative emotions, destructive affirmations, but beneath it all, the divine operating system remains untouched. When you speak words of truth, when you visualize harmony, when you feel gratitude, you are in effect reinstalling the original program, erasing the malware of fear, resetting the system to its pristine design. The body responds immediately. Cells reorganizing, tissues regenerating, circumstances realigning, for the builder always prefers the flawless plan once it is brought back to memory. Theologically, this is the meaning of Paul's declaration. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. Transformation is not the creation of something foreign, but the unveiling of what has always been. Renewal is not fabrication, but remembrance. To renew the mind is to remind the subconscious of its true orders, to call forth the image of God already imprinted within. This is why Murphy insisted that no one is beyond regeneration, no matter how many years have passed or how deep the sickness is gone. The divine pattern is eternal, and the moment you affirm it with conviction, the subconscious responds and renewal begins. So let this truth be your declaration tonight. You are not building a new self from scraps. You are revealing the self that has always been whole. Whisper with conviction, the new me is already here. I am whole now. The divine blueprint governs every cell. I am restored to my original design of perfection. Visualize yourself radiant, free, joyful, strong. Feel gratitude rising as though it were already done. Then rest, knowing that the subconscious has received the order and is faithfully executing it, not as something foreign, but as the reassertion of your true self. For the new you is not future, it is present, it is now, it is the eternal reality unveiled by the law of inner resurrection. And once this luminous truth begins to dawn upon the mind, that the new self is already inscribed in the eternal blueprint, and that every act of faith is simply the unveiling of what has always been present, there naturally follows a profound shift in how one views the future. For Joseph Murphy taught with unshakable conviction that the future is never a cruel accident, never the blind unfolding of heredity or the inescapable continuation of the past, but the obedient child of faith. Just as the subconscious builds the body according to the impressions it receives, so too it builds the circumstances of tomorrow from the images planted in it today. Every affirmation is a seed of destiny. Every visualization a sketch of what is to come. Every whispered word before sleep a decree inscribed upon the scroll of time. Thus, to command your cells to regenerate is also to command your future to renew, to rise, to flourish according to the divine pattern. Murphy would often use the parable of the farmer, reminding his listeners that no farmer plants corn and then expects to reap thorns, no wise sower scatters weeds and then prays for wheat. The soil does not argue with the seed, it simply reproduces in kind. In the same way, the subconscious, that eternal soil of the soul, never argues with the seeds of belief planted within it. If you plant fear, you reap failure. If you plant faith, you reap fulfillment. If you plant images of decline, the future obligingly arranges itself as decline. If you plant images of renewal, the future cannot help but manifest renewal. The soil of the subconscious is always fertile. What matters is the quality of the seed. Think of destiny not as a fixed script, but as a canvas stretched wide before you, awaiting the strokes of your imagination. If you paint in grays and shadows, convinced that tomorrow must be an echo of yesterday, then the picture will reflect that gloom. But if you take up the brush of faith and dip it in the colors of gratitude, joy, vitality, and abundance, then the canvas will glow with light, and your life will gradually conform to that radiant image. The subconscious, impartial as ever, is the painter who fills the canvas with whatever colors the conscious mind supplies. The future, therefore, is not a tyrant looming over you, but a servant awaiting your instruction. Theologically, this principle resonates with Christ's teaching. According to your faith, be it unto you. He did not say, according to your heredity, according to your circumstances, according to your statistics, but always according to your faith. Faith is the seed that writes the future, the spiritual DNA that codes tomorrow's events. Murphy explained that when you whisper before sleep, "My path is guided, my body is whole, my future is radiant with life," you are not making idle wishes, but programming your subconscious with orders it must carry out. The unseen currents of life begin to move, circumstances align, opportunities appear, and even the cells of your body respond to this decree. Philosophically, this realization is liberation itself. It means that you are no longer a prisoner of the past, chained to old mistakes or ancestral shadows. You are the architect of tomorrow, the co-author with God of the script that unfolds. Your future is not dictated by the years already lived, but by the images impressed tonight. When you align those images with the eternal blueprint of resurrection, your destiny cannot help but reflect renewal. To whisper nightly, "My future is coded with vitality, joy, and divine harmony," is to write a living prophecy, and the subconscious, faithful as law, will fulfill it in due time. So, let this be your practice. Each night, after affirming health for your cells, extend the decree to your destiny. Whisper, "My future is bright, my steps are guided, my days overflow with life. Divine order directs my path, and everything unfolds for my highest good." Picture yourself moving into tomorrow with confidence, doors opening before you, opportunities arising, strength surging through your body, peace radiating from your soul. Feel gratitude as though you are already walking in that future. Then surrender to sleep, knowing that you have planted the seeds of destiny in the fertile soil of the subconscious. And in time, as surely as harvest follows sowing, the future will bloom according to the seeds you have chosen. For your destiny is not heredity, not chance, not fate. It is the child of your faith. And faith commands resurrection. And now, having walked through the valley of fear and resentment, having uncovered the divine blueprint hidden beneath the corrosion of false belief, having proclaimed that the new self is already written, and that the future is but the child of faith, Joseph Murphy leads us to the great act of integration, the nightly ritual of resurrection. For knowledge alone is never enough. Law unpracticed is law unrealized. The subconscious is not moved by theories or arguments, but by repetition, by imagery, by suggestion, clothed in feeling. Just as a sculptor does not reveal beauty from marble by striking once, but by steady chiseling day after day, so too must we impress the subconscious steadily with the image of health and wholeness until the stone of the old self gives way to the radiant form within. Murphy therefore prescribed a sacred practice to be performed at the close of each day, a practice so simple in form yet so profound in power that it can rewrite the very code of one's being. The ritual begins with release the letting go of tension in the body and worry in the mind. You lie down upon your bed, close your eyes, breathe deeply, and let the muscles soften, the heartbeat steady, the thoughts slow. This relaxation is not mere comfort. It is the signal to the subconscious that the guard of reason is lowering, that the gates are open, that suggestion may enter unhindered. Into this stillness you begin to whisper words of life. Every cell of my body regenerates now. Divine order governs me. The spirit of resurrection quickens my mortal body. You speak them slowly, rhythmically, as though rocking the subconscious into agreement. You do not strain or plead. You declare with calm authority, knowing that the word once spoken is law. Then you clothe the word with imagery. You see in your inner vision a golden current flowing through your body, touching every organ, every nerve, every strand of DNA. You imagine each cell lighting up like a tiny lamp, vibrant with life, humming with divine harmony. You picture yourself rising strong, walking freely, smiling radiantly, living joyfully. You allow the scene to become vivid, detailed, and alive until it feels less like imagination and more like memory. The subconscious, unable to distinguish between the two, accepts the vision as fact and sets about fulfilling it. Next comes forgiveness. For Murphy knew that resentment obstructs the flow of life more effectively than any external condition. So you whisper, I release all who have hurt me. I forgive fully and freely. I forgive myself. Love fills me now. As you say this, you imagine the faces of those you once resented dissolving into light, chains falling away, your heart expanding with freedom. This act cleanses the subconscious of poison, clears the channel, and allows the impression of health to penetrate unopposed. Finally, you seal the practice with gratitude and surrender. Gratitude is the language of completion, the soul's way of declaring that the thing is already accomplished. So you whisper, thank you, Infinite Spirit, for the health that is mine, for the renewal already unfolding, for the wholeness that governs me now. You feel the peace of answered prayer, the quiet joy of assurance, the deep rest of faith. Then you let go, surrendering to sleep, confident that the subconscious has received its orders and is even now carrying them out. Through the silent hours while you dream, the inner builder is at work, weaving tissues, restoring balance, regenerating life according to the blueprint you impressed. Murphy urged that this ritual be practiced faithfully for 21 nights, for repetition engraves suggestion into permanence. Night after night, the impressions grow stronger, the blueprint clearer, until the subconscious accepts them without resistance and begins to express them with power. And as the days pass, you notice the signs: a new lightness in the body, a deeper calm in the mind, a quiet joy in the heart. These are the evidences that the law is working, that the command has been received, that resurrection is already underway. So tonight begin this sacred practice. Whisper your affirmations, paint your visions, release your resentments, express your gratitude, and surrender to sleep. Do this not as a desperate attempt, but as a confident decree, knowing that what is impressed must be expressed, and that the spirit of resurrection dwelling in you cannot fail. For this is the law of inner resurrection, that every night is a death to the old self and a rising into the new, every whisper a command to your cells, every image a decree to your destiny. Practice it faithfully, and you will discover the miracle that Murphy proclaimed that decline is not your inheritance, regeneration is, and the law of life within you will always answer the command of faith. At the summit of this journey, when all has been spoken and practiced, Joseph Murphy would leave his listeners with the crowning truth that resurrection is not a distant hope nor a symbolic doctrine, but a living reality that can be claimed here and now, in this very moment, by the declaration of faith. For too long, men and women have postponed their renewal, saying within themselves, "One day I will be healed, one day I will be strong again, one day I will find my freedom." Yet Murphy thundered that the subconscious does not dwell in the future tense. It does not understand someday. It knows only the eternal present, the living now. To whisper, "I will be whole," is to instruct the subconscious to forever delay wholeness, to keep it always just ahead, always unreachable. But to whisper, "I am whole now," is to command the subconscious in the only language it understands, to impress upon it the reality of present regeneration, and the subconscious, faithful and obedient, begins at once to execute the order. This is why Murphy insisted that resurrection is always immediate. It is not dependent on years of ritual, nor on the slow turning of fate, nor on the permission of circumstance. Resurrection is the sudden emergence of the eternal pattern and divisibility, the instant reassertion of the divine blueprint once it is accepted by faith. Appearances may take time to shift, just as a seed takes time to sprout after it is planted. But the inner reality is established the moment the suggestion is impressed. The law begins its work in silence, unseen but inexorable, and the outer result will come in its season. The key is to declare it now, to feel it now, to believe it now. Imagine the dawn breaking after a long night. For hours the world lies in darkness, and one might despair that the sun will never rise. Yet, in an instant, the first light appears on the horizon, and the certainty of day banishes every fear of endless night. So it is with the declaration of resurrection. The very moment you affirm it, the darkness of despair begins to recede, and the light of renewal shines in your heart, announcing that the day has already begun. You may not yet see its fullness, but you know it is inevitable, because the dawn is already present. Philosophically, this truth is the final liberation from determinism. You are not a creature of time dragging the chains of yesterday into tomorrow. You are a spiritual being living in the eternal present, where God's law is always active. To affirm now is to step outside the illusion of delay and to enter into alignment with reality as it is in spirit. The body must then follow, for it is but the servant of the mind, and the mind that accepts wholeness now commands the body to express it. Theologically, this is nothing less than the gospel of resurrection applied to the individual soul. Christ declared, "I am the resurrection and the life, not I will be, but I am." In that eternal present, Lazarus was raised, the sick were healed, the blind received sight. When you echo that I am in your own whispers, I am whole, I am strong, I am renewed, you are not imitating but participating in the same law, the same spirit, the same eternal life that raised Christ from the grave. This is the essence of divine inheritance. To live in resurrection now, not to postpone it for some other world or time. So tonight, seal your practice with a final declaration. As you lay down and the veil of sleep descends, whisper slowly, reverently, with feeling, "I am whole now. I am strong now. The resurrection power quickens me now. Every cell of me vibrates with divine life now. Let the word now ring like a bell in your heart, dissolving every delay, every doubt, every shadow. Feel the truth of it as though already embodied. See yourself radiant with strength. Hear yourself speaking with joy. Walk in imagination as though it were already accomplished. Then surrender to sleep, knowing the subconscious has received the decree and is already carrying it out. For this is the final mystery Murphy revealed. Resurrection is not tomorrow. It is today. It is not later. It is now. And when you dare to speak it, to feel it, to believe it, the law cannot fail, the body cannot resist, the cells cannot disobey. The command of faith is the command of God within you, and it is always answered. Say it, whisper it, live it. I am whole now. And as you do, the dawn of resurrection breaks within, and your life rises into the radiant day of renewal, having entered into the radiant realization that resurrection is not future but present, that the divine blueprint is active now and the body must obey the command of faith. Joseph Murphy would not leave the seeker with a merely private vision of wholeness, but would expand their horizon to embrace destiny itself as the field of resurrection. For he taught that just as the cells respond to the word of command, so too does the future respond to the pattern impressed upon the subconscious. The future is not some dark, uncharted forest into which we stumble blindly, but a garden planted with seeds of thought, watered by emotion, and harvested in due time. Every affirmation, every whispered decree, every nightly visualization is a seed sown into that garden. And just as surely as an acorn cannot yield thorns nor a weed blossom into roses, so the seeds planted in the subconscious determine the harvest of destiny. If you whisper, decline, the future unfolds as decline. If you whisper resurrection, the future rises as renewal. Murphy loved to insist that destiny is not fate but faith. Fate is the word of bondage, the belief that one is chained to heredity, to environment, to the shadows of the past. Faith is the word of freedom, the conviction that the spirit within is greater than circumstance, greater than genetics, greater than statistics, greater even than time. When you whisper before sleep, my future is guided by divine wisdom. My path is straight, my days overflow with life, my destiny is radiant with abundance. You are planting in the subconscious the blueprint of a future so luminous that it cannot help but manifest in due season. The subconscious, impartial as ever, sets about arranging people, opportunities, and even the chemical life of your body to reflect that image. Consider the metaphor of a sculptor facing a block of marble. To the untrained eye, the marble is a dead mass, cold and heavy. But to the sculptor's imagination, the figure is already present within. He need only remove the excess stone to reveal it. So too is your destiny already present within the subconscious. What you believe, you carve. What you imagine, you reveal. If you imagine shadows, the statue will bear scars and fractures. But if you imagine radiance, the statue emerges as beauty. Each affirmation, each visualization, each whispered command is a chisel stroke removing what is false and revealing what is true. Destiny, like marble, is already shaped by the hands of imagination, and the figure that emerges is the future you will live. Theologically, this insight is supported by the eternal truth that, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. The heart in Scripture is the subconscious, the inner workshop of faith. To think in the heart is to impress upon the subconscious an image of reality. And what is impressed there must, by the law of life, be expressed in time. When you declare with conviction, my future is coated with vitality, joy, and divine harmony, you are speaking a living prophecy, and the spirit within, which governs both cells and circumstances, hastens to fulfill it. This is why Murphy called the subconscious the womb of creation. It receives the seed of faith and nurtures it until it comes forth into the visible world. So let tonight's practice extend beyond the body into the vast canvas of tomorrow. As you lie down, do not only whisper, my cells are renewed, but also whisper, my future is renewed. Divine order guides every step. Doors open before me. Opportunities surround me. Love and abundance flow through me. Picture yourself walking into days filled with light, meeting the right people at the right time, flourishing in health, radiating peace. Feel the gratitude of that fulfilled destiny as though you were already living it. Then surrender to sleep, confident that the subconscious has received both the command of the body and the command of destiny, and is already shaping both into harmony. For your future is not the echo of heredity, not the shadow of fear, not the repetition of yesterday. Your future is the child of your faith, and faith commands resurrection. And now, as the circle of teaching draws to its radiant conclusion, Joseph Murphy would weave every thread of truth into one seamless garment of practice. presenting what he called the nightly ritual of resurrection, a sacred ceremony not of outer pomp or elaborate rite, but of inward alignment, simple in form, yet infinite in consequence. He taught that the subconscious is most impressionable in the moments before sleep, when the body sinks into rest and the vigilant conscious guard lowers its defenses. This twilight state, poised between waking and slumber, is the golden gate through which suggestion passes directly into the inner workshop of life. It is here, at this threshold, that you become priest and prophet of your own destiny, whispering decrees that the subconscious must obey through the silent hours of the night. The ritual begins in stillness. You lie upon your bed and allow the body to relax, to surrender its burdens, to dissolve its tensions. You breathe deeply and evenly, sending a signal of peace to every nerve and muscle. In this calm, the mind is softened, receptive, like fertile soil awaiting seed. Into this soil you plant the first word: gentle, rhythmic, certain. I command my cells to regenerate. Every organ is restored. The spirit of resurrection quickens my body now. You whisper it not as a plea, but as a decree, not as a question, but as law. The subconscious, hearing this decree in the silence, accepts it as its new command. Next comes imagery, for the subconscious thrives on pictures. You envision a golden stream of light descending from infinite spirit, flowing through your body like liquid fire, touching each cell with vitality, illuminating each strand of DNA with divine order. You see your blood coursing strong and pure, your heart beating steady and powerful, your lungs expanding with ease, your nerves humming with harmony. You do not merely see, you feel. You sense warmth flooding your limbs, strength rising in your muscles, peace radiating from your core. You let gratitude swell in your heart as though the transformation were already complete, for gratitude seals the impression with the certainty of faith. Then comes forgiveness, the clearing of the channel, the releasing of the past. You whisper softly, I release all who have harmed me. I forgive them and set them free. I forgive myself completely. I am free, and love governs me now. As you say these words, you imagine chains falling from your heart, bitterness dissolving into light, resentment evaporating like mist in the morning sun. You feel space open within, circulation restored, energy flowing freely once again. The subconscious, cleansed of poison, now has no resistance to the new command of life. Finally, you seal the ritual with surrender and thanksgiving. You whisper, Thank you, Infinite Spirit, that it is done. Thank you for the wholeness now manifesting. Thank you for the life eternal flowing through me. You allow peace to enfold you like a warm mantle, knowing that the work is no longer yours but the subconscious's, the divine physician's, the eternal gardener's. And as you drift into sleep, you rest in the assurance that through the night the silent surgeon is obeying your command, directing your cells to regenerate, weaving tissues anew, restoring vitality, shaping tomorrow, according to the decree you impressed tonight. Murphy promised that if this ritual is practiced faithfully for 21 nights, transformation must follow, for the law is absolute. What is impressed is expressed. Night after night, the impression grows deeper, the blueprint clearer, until the subconscious no longer questions but executes without delay. And then the visible evidence appears, perhaps gradually, perhaps suddenly, but inevitably. Strength returns, pain dissolves, opportunities open, life renews. For the subconscious never fails to build what it has been commanded, and the command of faith is always resurrection. So let this be your nightly work, to lie down in peace, to whisper words of life, to paint images of health, to release resentments, to express gratitude, and to surrender with trust. Repeat it with devotion, not mechanically but reverently, until it becomes the rhythm of your evenings, the music of your soul. And as you persist, you will prove for yourself the eternal truth Joseph Murphy proclaimed, that you can command your cells to regenerate, that the law of inner resurrection is active within you, and that every whisper of faith before sleep is a decree that reshapes your body, your destiny, and your world. At the close of this teaching, Joseph Murphy would not merely rest the case on private healing or personal transformation, but he would lift the vision outward to embrace humanity itself in the radiant scope of this law. For he saw that the whispers of individuals, multiplied across hearts and homes, become the tide that shifts the destiny of nations and the future of the world. Just as each cell in the body responds to the command of the subconscious, so too each soul in the human family contributes to the subconscious of the race, that vast collective field where the fears of centuries and the faith of saints intermingle and give birth to the currents of history. Wars, poverty, epidemics, and decline are not merely the workings of blind fate, they are the harvest of collective fear impressed upon the world's subconscious. But just as surely, renewal, peace, prosperity, and resurrection are the inevitable harvest when faith is planted instead. Thus, every whisper of health before sleep is not only medicine for your body, but a ripple in the ocean of humanity's soul, carrying its vibration outward into the whole. Murphy would tell his listeners that the awakened soul has a responsibility as well as a privilege. Once you know that the subconscious obeys every impression, you can no longer afford to whisper fear, to rehearse hatred, to indulge resentment, for those impressions do not stop at your skin. They radiate outward, mingling with the collective atmosphere. But the reverse is equally true. Every affirmation of love strengthens the climate of love on earth. Every declaration of health contributes to humanity's healing. Every vision of abundance enriches the field of supply. Imagine, then, what could happen if thousands, tens of thousands, millions of men and women around the world lay down each night and whispered not despair but resurrection, not fear but faith, not resentment but forgiveness, not decline but renewal. Imagine the collective subconscious, long poisoned by fear, being cleansed by a flood of whispered affirmations of divine order. The tide of history itself would turn, for the law that governs the individual also governs the whole. Consider the metaphor of a choir. One voice may sound frail, wavering in the night, but when voices multiply, the harmony swells until the very walls tremble with resonance. So too with the whispers of faith. Alone, your affirmation renews your own body, reshapes your own destiny. But joined with countless others, it becomes a hymn of resurrection that reverberates through the subconscious of the race, commanding not only your cells, but the cells of humanity to regenerate, to rise, to be restored. Wars dissolve in the presence of forgiveness. Poverty evaporates in the atmosphere of abundance. Disease retreats before the decree of health. The world is rewritten one whisper at a time. Theologically, this is the unfolding of the kingdom of God within and among us. Christ prayed, "Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." Heaven is the eternal blueprint of harmony, untouched, uncorrupted. Earth is the field where that blueprint must be impressed, and each whisper of faith is a stroke of alignment, a decree that heaven's pattern be mirrored here. When enough souls agree in their subconscious, when enough voices whisper the law of resurrection, earth itself must yield, for what is impressed must be expressed not only in one body, but in the body of humanity. So tonight, as you prepare your own ritual, remember that you do not whisper alone. With you are countless others who long for renewal, who believe in the law, who practice the same affirmations in their own solitude. Join your voice with theirs in spirit. Whisper not only, "I am whole," but also, "Humanity is whole. Love governs the world." The spirit of resurrection renews the earth now. Imagine the globe itself bathed in golden light, every nation, every people, every soul vibrating with the harmony of God. Feel the gratitude as though it were already accomplished. Drift into sleep with this universal vision and know that your whisper has joined a chorus that is rewriting the very DNA of the race. For the law of inner resurrection is not confined to the individual. It is cosmic, it is universal, it is eternal. It calls every cell, every soul, every society to rise from the tomb of fear into the garden of faith. And as you whisper tonight, remember that you are both participant and prophet in this great unfolding, a voice in the hymn of humanity, commanding not only your own cells, but the cells of creation itself to regenerate, to renew, to live again. At last, Joseph Murphy would bring the seeker to the final seal, the closing cadence of the symphony where all teachings converge into one luminous certainty that the whispers you speak in the silence of your heart are not passing echoes, but eternal decrees that shape the architecture of your destiny and ripple into the collective soul of humanity. He would remind his students with solemn joy that nothing is ever wasted, no word spoken in faith ever falls into emptiness, no affirmation whispered before sleep is ever lost, no image of wholeness ever dissolves into nothingness. Each one is a seed sown in the garden of the subconscious, and each seed must by law bring forth fruit in its time. Therefore, he urged his followers to walk in reverence, to guard their thoughts, to sanctify their words, to choose their feelings as carefully as a sculptor chooses his tools, for they are not trivial energies, but the building blocks of life itself. Murphy would often liken the nightly whisper to a spark struck in the darkness. Alone it may seem small, flickering, fragile, but repeated again and again, the sparks kindle into flame, and the flame grows into fire, and soon the fire cannot be quenched. So it is with the practice of affirmation. One whisper may seem inconsequential, 2 whispers may seem faint, but 21 nights of whispers engrave a groove in the subconscious so deep that nothing can erase it, and then the body, the circumstances, and the future must conform. The subconscious is law. It cannot resist what is persistently impressed. This is why he declared that destiny is not written by chance nor dictated by heredity, but authored by the soul that dares to whisper truth with conviction night after night until truth becomes flesh. Consider how this realization transforms the rhythm of daily life. The seeker no longer wanders in confusion, muttering careless words or rehearsing fears, but moves with purpose, knowing that every syllable is a command, every thought an impression, every emotion a decree. Life itself becomes a sacred liturgy. Morning affirmations as offerings of praise, daily thoughts as hymns of alignment, nightly whispers as benedictions of resurrection. The seeker becomes priest and prophet of their own temple, ministering to the cells of their body, speaking to their subconscious as one speaks to a beloved child, guiding it gently but firmly into the paths of health, joy, and abundance. Theologically, this is the fulfillment of the divine promise. Behold, I make all things new, not some things, not occasionally, not in some distant future, but all things now. When you whisper before sleep, I am whole, I am free, I am renewed by the Spirit of God, you are participating in this eternal renewal, aligning yourself with the rhythm of creation itself. You are no longer waiting for heaven to descend, you are bringing heaven into expression in your body, in your future, in your world. The resurrection is not a hope deferred, but a reality claimed, and every whisper is a stone rolled away from the tomb of false belief, releasing the light of eternal life already dwelling within you. So let this be the final call. Whisper as though the world depends upon it, for it does. Whisper as though your cells are listening, for they are. Whisper as though God himself is speaking through you, for he is. Say it with reverence, say it with love, say it with unshakable certainty. I am whole now. My body is renewed now. My future is radiant now. Humanity is restored now. Then rest in peace, knowing that what you have impressed tonight is already being expressed, silently, faithfully, inexorably, by the law of the subconscious. For the word once spoken is never lost, the image once planted is never wasted, and the faith once declared is never denied. This is the law of inner resurrection, eternal, universal, and unbreakable. And by practicing it, you discover at last that the whisper of your soul is the roar of creation, commanding life, commanding renewal, commanding resurrection, now and forever. And with this closing vision, Joseph Murphy would not only leave his students with a doctrine or a ritual, but with a living commission, a charge to embody and extend the law of inner resurrection as a way of life. For he insisted that the whisper is never meant to remain in the secrecy of night alone, but to spill into the dawn and color every word, every action, every encounter of the day. The subconscious is not impressed only at bedtime. It is impressed by every hour's atmosphere, every tone of speech, every lingering thought. If the nightly ritual is the planting of seeds, then the daylight hours are the tending of the garden, the pulling up of weeds, the watering of affirmations, the basking in the sunlight of gratitude. Thus he urged his followers to live deliberately, to be guardians of their inner climate, to monitor with holy attentiveness what they speak, what they imagine, what they feel, knowing that these are not idle indulgences but the very materials from which destiny is woven. Imagine a man who whispers resurrection each night but spends the day complaining, doubting, rehearsing fears. He is like a farmer who sows good seed at dusk and then tramples the field at dawn, tearing up what he planted. The harvest is delayed, the field confused, the soil conflicted. But imagine another who whispers life at night and walks in expectancy by day, speaking words of faith at work, carrying gratitude in his heart at home, forgiving offenses as soon as they arise, affirming silently in the midst of challenges, "Divine order governs me. All is well." Such a one waters the seed continually, protects it from weeds, nurtures it into growth, and in due season the harvest of health, abundance, and peace cannot be withheld. Murphy would often remind his listeners that the law of impression is constant, impartial, inexorable. What you dwell upon in thought, you command. What you repeat with feeling, you decree. What you expect with conviction, you experience. And so the work of the awakened soul is not to beg for miracles, but to live in awareness that every moment is creative, every thought, a seed, every whisper, a brushstroke upon the canvas of tomorrow. The resurrection does not wait for a special occasion. It is enacted daily, hourly, with every inner word. Theologically, this transforms life itself into sacrament. The morning greeting becomes a blessing, the daily task a prayer, the quiet thought a command. Paul's exhortation to pray without ceasing is fulfilled, not in constant verbal petitions, but in the steady maintenance of a consciousness aligned with truth. To live with awareness of the law is to live in continuous prayer, continuous creation, continuous resurrection. The kingdom of God is no longer confined to the temple or the church, but becomes the atmosphere of the soul, carried everywhere, active always, whispering silently yet shaping visibly. So let this be your practice beyond the ritual, to carry into the day the same reverence, the same expectancy, the same authority with which you whisper at night. Guard your words in conversation. Let them be seeds of life. Guard your images in imagination. Let them be pictures of wholeness. Guard your emotions. Let them be currents of love and gratitude. And when challenges arise, let them not drag you back into fear, but let them become opportunities to reaffirm, to say again with conviction, "I am whole now. Divine wisdom guides me now. Life regenerates me now." In this way, the whisper of night becomes the song of day, the law of resurrection becomes the rhythm of life, and you discover that regeneration is not an occasional miracle, but a constant unfolding. For in the end, Murphy's teaching is not simply about commanding cells in secret moments of prayer, but about living as a conscious co-creator with God, moment by moment, breath by breath. Whisper at night, affirm by day, forgive continually, give generously, walk gratefully, and you will find that every fiber of your being resonates with resurrection. The old self dissolves not in one sudden flash alone, but in the steady dawning of a new consciousness, until one day you look back and realize that you no longer merely believe in resurrection, you live it, you embody it, you are it. And in this final unfolding, Murphy would invite his listeners to see themselves not only as recipients of the law, but as transmitters of it, living testimonies whose very presence becomes a contagion of faith and renewal in the lives of others. He would remind them that the subconscious is always listening, not only within the individual, but also resonating across the invisible bonds of human connection. The atmosphere of your soul influences those around you just as surely as fragrance fills a room or warmth radiates from a flame. If you walk burdened with fear, complaint, and despair, others feel it, and knowingly or not, take on its weight. But if you walk clothed in peace, speaking words of life, carrying an inward song of resurrection, then those who come near to you cannot help but feel uplifted, as though they too had heard the whisper of renewal within their own hearts. Thus Murphy taught that the law of inner resurrection is not meant to stop at your skin, but to overflow, to ripple outward, to become a healing presence in families and communities in the world. Consider the quiet power of one who has made the nightly ritual their way of life. They rise in the morning refreshed. Their voice carries calm assurance. Their face glows with peace. Their words are seasoned with encouragement. Without preaching, without argument, without even deliberate effort, they become a demonstration of what is possible. A neighbor struggling with illness sees them radiant and begins to believe that health is possible again. A child growing in an atmosphere of anxiety feels their presence and learns to trust life. A coworker burdened with despair overhears their quiet affirmation and feels hope stir. Like a candle lighting another candle without losing its own flame, so does the awakened soul ignite faith in those they encounter. This, Murphy would say, is the true ministry, not sermons alone, but lives that shine with proof that resurrection is a present law. Philosophically, this reveals the communal dimension of consciousness. You are not isolated, sealed in a private chamber of thought. Your whispers, your beliefs, your inner climate contribute to the collective field of humanity. Each act of faith is a contribution to the healing of the race. Each affirmation, spoken with sincerity, is a stone placed in the foundation of a brighter world. To practice the law is therefore to accept responsibility not only for your own body and destiny, but also for the shared destiny of mankind. Theologically, this vision expands the scope of resurrection into its cosmic meaning. Paul declared, "As in Adam all die, so in Christ shall all be made alive." To Murphy, this was not only a prophecy of the afterlife, but a revelation of the law, that the Christ consciousness of resurrection within one becomes the seed of life for many. When you whisper, "I am whole now," you are not only affirming for yourself, you are contributing to the universal proclamation, "We are whole now." Your faith strengthens the fabric of the world's faith. Your healing paves the way for the healing of others. Your forgiveness loosens the chains that bind more than your own soul. So let this be the final extension of your nightly ritual. When you have whispered for your own renewal, whisper also for the renewal of the world. Say softly, "Humanity is healed. Love governs the nations. Peace fills the earth. The spirit of resurrection renews all creation now." Imagine the planet itself bathed in golden light, the collective DNA of the human race glowing with divine order, wars dissolving, poverty evaporating, hearts opening to love. Drift into sleep with this vision, and know that your subconscious has joined the chorus of all awakened souls in rewriting the destiny of the world. For resurrection is not yours alone, it is the inheritance of all, the universal law of life calling creation itself to rise, regenerate, and rejoice. And finally, Joseph Murphy would draw the curtain on this great discourse by returning to the simplest and most profound truth of all, that what you whisper in secret in the stillness of your own heart before sleep becomes the architecture of your tomorrow, the very script by which your body, your destiny, and even your world must act. He would remind his students with solemn tenderness that the subconscious mind is the most faithful servant in creation. It never rests, it never forgets, it never argues. It simply obeys the command impressed upon it with feeling. And because it obeys, life itself is malleable, subject not to the iron chains of heredity, nor to the accidents of chance, but to the decrees of the Spirit, clothed in words and images of faith. Every whisper is a brushstroke upon the canvas of eternity, every affirmation a chisel strike upon the marble of destiny, every visualization a seed planted in the garden of time. Nothing is wasted, nothing is ignored, nothing is denied, all is received, all is obeyed, all is expressed. He would call upon his students to guard their words with reverence, to treat their inner dialogue not as idle chatter, but as creative force. For every careless phrase, every cynical thought, every muttered fear is a seed, and seeds do not fail to grow. But he would also reassure them that the weeds of yesterday need not dominate the harvest of tomorrow. For one deliberate whisper, spoken nightly with feeling, has the power to uproot years of false belief. One declaration of truth, repeated with conviction, can rewrite the entire code of the subconscious. Just as the smallest candle dispels the thickest darkness, so does one whisper of faith dissolve the shadows of fear. Murphy would often say that the difference between bondage and freedom, sickness and health, despair, and joy lies not in external events, but in the inner decision to whisper life instead of death, hope instead of fear, blessing instead of curse. He urged his students never to underestimate the quiet power of persistence. For while one night's whisper is powerful, 21 nights engrave grooves in the subconscious so deep that nothing can erase them, and a lifetime of whispered faith creates an atmosphere where miracles become natural. The body obeys, the future unfolds, the world responds because the law is unbreakable. What is impressed must be expressed. Theologically, this is the fulfillment of the divine image in man. When Scripture declares that humanity was made in the likeness of God, Murphy interpreted this as the power of creative word implanted in the subconscious. God spoke, and worlds appeared. Man speaks, and destiny appears. To whisper before sleep is therefore to imitate the Creator, to participate in the ongoing work of creation, to echo the eternal word within one's own sphere. And because the spirit of resurrection dwells in every soul, the whisper of faith carries within it the same potency that raised Christ from the tomb, the power to call forth life where death seemed inevitable, harmony where chaos reigned, renewal where decline appeared. So let the final practice be this. Each night, before surrendering to sleep, gather all the truths into one luminous declaration. Whisper softly, I am whole now. My cells regenerate now. My body is restored now. My future is radiant now. Humanity is renewed now. Thank you, Infinite Spirit, that it is so. Say it not with strain, but with serenity, not with doubt, but with quiet certainty. Feel it as real. See it as present, rest in it as accomplished, then let go and sleep in peace, knowing that while you rest, the subconscious is laboring faithfully, weaving your words into flesh, sculpting your visions into reality, orchestrating your future into harmony. For this is the law of inner resurrection, the law that Murphy proclaimed with such authority, that decline is never final, that death is never the last word, that heredity is never master, that fear is never king. Life is master, spirit is king, resurrection is the last word, and that last word can be spoken every night, in every heart, in every whisper. Speak it, believe it, live it, and you will discover that your cells obey, your body renews, your future flourishes, and the world itself is lifted by your faith. For the whisper in secret is the shout in eternity, the seed in silence is the harvest in time, and the law of resurrection is as unbreakable as the love of God itself. And so, in the last movement of this symphony of truth, Joseph Murphy would gather every principle into a single radiant stream, pressing upon his listeners the vision of continuity, that the practice of commanding one's cells to regenerate is not a temporary experiment, but a lifelong rhythm, a sacred dialogue between spirit and flesh, between conscious word and subconscious response. He would remind them that the law of inner resurrection does not expire, does not weaken, does not wane with age. It is as eternal as the rising of the sun, as constant as the tides, as certain as the return of spring after the winter. Just as nature renews itself in ceaseless cycles, the tree shedding its leaves only to blossom again, the river evaporating only to return as rain, the stars dying only to give birth to galaxies, so too does the body, when governed by faith, enter into perpetual renewal. To live with this awareness is to align oneself with the great rhythm of creation itself, to see aging not as decay but as transformation, to see challenge not as defeat but as the soil from which greater strength can rise. He would invite his students to think of themselves as custodians of a temple whose stones are cells and whose altar is the subconscious mind. Each night's whisper is like the lighting of lamps upon that altar, filling the temple with radiance. Each day's word of faith is like the laying of a new stone, repairing cracks, strengthening foundations. And the temple, though weathered by storms, never falls into ruin so long as the caretaker tends it with devotion. This metaphor was central to Murphy's teaching, that your body is not an enemy to be fought, nor a prison to be escaped, but a holy dwelling to be honored, restored, renewed. When you whisper to yourselves, you are not commanding slaves, but addressing priests of the divine order within you, calling them back into harmony with the eternal liturgy of life. Philosophically, this continuous renewal is the resolution of the ancient debate between fatalism and freedom. Fate insists that man must decline as years accumulate, that destiny is a script written in advance by heredity and circumstance. Freedom insists that man is spirit, and spirit is forever new, forever rising, forever capable of reasserting the divine image. Murphy's voice harmonizes with freedom. You are not chained to the cycle of decline, you are invited into the cycle of renewal. The law is not decay but resurrection, not bondage but liberty, not death but life. To accept this is to enter into a new philosophy of existence, one where every year is not a step toward dissolution but another season of growth, every challenge not a wall but a threshold. Theologically, he tied this eternal renewal to the unchanging truth of God's presence within. Behold, the scripture says, I make all things new. This promise is not suspended in the heavens, it is inscribed in every cell of your being. The Spirit that breathed life into Adam, that raised Christ from the tomb, that sustains the galaxies, is the same Spirit whispering through your subconscious even now. Live, renew, regenerate. To live in faith is to allow that voice to echo through you without obstruction, to let divine order sing its way through your cells until every organ, every tissue, every thought vibrates with the song of life. And so Murphy's closing exhortation is simple yet inexhaustible. Never cease the practice. Whisper when you are weary, whisper when you are strong, whisper when you are afraid, whisper when you are joyful. Let the words of resurrection become the breath of your nights and the rhythm of your days. Speak gently but consistently. I am renewed, I am whole. I am life eternal in expression. Carry the practice until it is not a practice but a way of being, until the whisper is no longer a conscious effort but the very song of your heart. For then and only then will you realize the full grandeur of the law of inner resurrection, that life is not a march toward death, but a spiral of endless renewal, that your body is not condemned to decline but invited to regenerate, that your destiny is not chained to fear but liberated by faith. This is the final word of the teaching, not decline but resurrection, not bondage but freedom, not despair but the eternal whisper of life rising forever within you. Joseph Murphy, in the quiet grandeur of his message, would often conclude by turning the seeker's gaze toward the great paradox that lies at the heart of spiritual law, that the whisper which feels so small, so fragile, so fleeting, carries within it the force that moves galaxies, heals nations, and regenerates the very tissues of the body. He would remind them that man is constantly tempted to look for power in noise, in spectacle, in the thunder of outer circumstance. But the true law of life works in silence, in stillness, in the intimate secrecy of the heart. Just as seeds germinate underground, just as embryos form in hidden darkness, just as the stars themselves are born in the quiet womb of the cosmos, so too does the power of resurrection begin with whispers spoken in faith. What the world dismisses as trivial, the subconscious magnifies into destiny. What seems like a murmur in the night becomes in due season the shout of a transformed life. Murphy would say that every soul must eventually learn to trust this silence, to believe that their whispered words are not lost in the void but are immediately received by the subconscious, engraved upon the inner blueprint, and set into motion by the Spirit of God within. Too many abandon the practice because they do not see instant results, forgetting that nature herself conceals growth until the appointed time. A farmer does not dig up the seed each morning to check its progress. He trusts the soil, he trusts the law, he waters faithfully, and he waits with assurance. So too must you learn to trust the law of resurrection. The moment you whisper, I am whole now, I am renewed now, I am resurrected now, the seed is planted, the process has begun, the law is already at work. Delay in appearance is not denial. It is simply the invisible rhythm of growth unfolding in its perfect order. Theologically, Murphy rooted this assurance in the timeless truth of divine fidelity. God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man sows, that shall he also reap. If you sow fear, fear returns. If you sow faith, faith blossoms. If you sow resentment, resentment corrodes. If you sow forgiveness, forgiveness liberates. The law is impartial, unwavering, eternal, and this is its comfort. It cannot be bribed, it cannot be swayed, it cannot fail. To plant seeds of resurrection with sincerity is to invoke the very constancy of God himself, whose word does not return void, but accomplishes what it is sent to do. When you whisper health into your cells, you are speaking with the same creative authority that framed the universe, and the subconscious, reflecting the divine, must obey. Philosophically, this trust in the unseen transforms life into a work of art. No longer does the seeker demand proof at every turn. Instead, they live as artists of consciousness, painting each day with the brushstrokes of affirmation, shaping each season with the contours of imagination. They understand that reality is not dictated by appearances, but sculpted by impressions, and so they no longer fear what the eyes see, for they know that the invisible is stronger than the visible, the whispered decree stronger than the shouted doubt. They become co-creators with the infinite, not in arrogance, but in reverence, aligning their whispers with the eternal word that sustains all things. And so Murphy's final counsel is to persevere with patience and joy. Do not measure your progress by the clock or by the mirror. Measure it by the certainty of the law. Each night when you whisper, know that you are aligning with the very rhythm of creation. Each morning when you rise, carry the expectancy of harvest. Each day, act as though your command has already been fulfilled, for in truth it has been. The body is regenerating, the future is unfolding, the spirit is rising, all because you dared to whisper in the silence of faith. Thus, the last exhortation is simple yet inexhaustible. Never despise the whisper. Cherish it, practice it, live it, for within it is the seed of eternal life. And as you whisper, remember that you are not alone. All creation is whispering with you. The spirit within you echoes your decree, and heaven itself bends low to amplify your word. One day you will awaken and realize that the whisper of yesterday has become the song of today, the destiny of tomorrow, the eternal hymn of resurrection sung through your very being. In the very last cadence of his message, Joseph Murphy would draw together every strand of this teaching into a final vision of empowerment, urging the seeker to claim their role, not merely as a petitioner of life, but as a commander of life, a conscious participant in the eternal law of resurrection. He would say that each person stands at a crossroads every night, to drift into sleep as a prisoner of yesterday's fears, or to step into sleep as a sovereign, issuing decrees of renewal that the subconscious must execute. For sleep is not escape, but creation. It is the workshop where the blueprints of the soul are translated into the structures of the body and the patterns of tomorrow. And so he charged his students to approach the night not with resignation, but with reverence, to see each evening as a sacred audience with the infinite within, a chance to speak words that echo into flesh, into destiny, into history itself. Murphy knew the longing that dwells in every heart, the longing to begin again, to shed the scars of the past, to awaken renewed, to rise stronger, freer, more whole than before. This longing is universal, whether it takes the form of yearning for health, for peace, for abundance, or for love. And he declared that this longing is not futile, not vain, not the cruel trick of biology, but the whisper of God himself within you, urging you to claim what is already yours. The law of resurrection is not a luxury for a few, but an inheritance for all. The same spirit that animates the stars animates your cells. The same power that lifts spring from winter lifts your body from decline. The same word that raised Christ from the tomb raises you from the shadows of fear into the radiance of faith. Picture the nightly practice as the weaving of a tapestry. Each affirmation is a thread of gold, each visualization a pattern of light, each act of forgiveness a knot untied, each expression of gratitude a jewel set in place. Night after night, as you repeat the ritual, the tapestry grows more beautiful, until one morning you awaken to find yourself clothed in it, a life transformed, a body renewed, a destiny radiant. Others may marvel, calling it miracle, coincidence, or chance, but you will know it as law.